selfishly for what he wants to do in his own life, but imparting that in his community in Harlem specifically. And so to me, I try to roll with people immediately that give me that feeling of well intentions, which is why I love Gary so much, as you guys know. And so we've, connected through social media and all of that. And it's just great to see how we fall off. We don't connect necessarily, but just ephemerally, you just know entrepreneurs and hustlers when their heads are down. You don't hear a lot about them, but you just instinctively wish them well. So I've always, just from afar, have been wishing you well, and I know you've done the same.
Thank you.
And so it's super exciting to see how things are unfolding for you.
Thank you.
So take it away, John. Tell me who you are, your origin story, and if you want to, take it wherever you want, maybe recap a little of what you said on stage.
Yeah, sure. We'll keep it light on bio because I like the no bio zone. But yeah, my name's John Henry. I'm an entrepreneur. Been building businesses for a little while now. Was fortunate to get started early. My first business was an on-demand dry cleaner for film productions. So we cleaned the pretty much dirty underwear of like big movies, Wolf of Wall Street, Boardwalk Empire, Law and Order, so forth. And went through that first experience, was fortunate to sell that business. And since then, I've been either incubating companies and now most recently investing in businesses through a fund called Harlem Capital, where we invest specifically in women and minority founders. All while building those businesses, though, I've had a lot of media opportunities. So I've hosted podcasts for the Washington Post and for eBay and Samsung. And most recently now with this with this TV show, Viceland. Show's called Hustle. So yeah, it's been so far a wildly fulfilling career trajectory for me to have both sides of my brain scratched, where I get the technical complexity of building a business, but I also get the satisfaction of being, visible and connecting with people. And, I like to share real time. So I do think that folks get misled sometimes on, they might follow me on social channels, and I get some people say, well, he thinks he's a guru, and I correct them and I say, I'm just learning, I'm sharing what I'm learning real time. Mm-hmm. That's what it is. And I invest heavily into doing so. So as I learn things, I'll share real time. And if it could bring value to anyone, great. And if not, then all the same. But so far, it's been a really great thing. And I'm starting to build a little community around me. And so, yeah, when Gary hit me up and said, hey, I want you to keynote Agent 2021 this year, I was floored, and it felt like a tall order, but here we are.
Well, and let's see how, speak to that circle moment, right? Because here we are several years ago at one of his events, and clearly you guys have built a relationship over the years, and how it feels now to be, speaking at one of his premier events.
Yeah, no, it is bizarre. It is bizarre. One differentiation that I feel I've always had is when I see someone operate at a really high level, rather than default into, oh man, that's so cool, and like grasp at it from a distance as if that could never be me, I take the opposite inspiration and I say, wow, that's really cool that you can operate at that level. Thank you so much for showing me that you can operate at that level. How can I get there and beyond in my own way?
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like, that's when you have the good seed. Mm-hmm. Someone who like sees someone, they resonate with them, and then they want to do as well, rather than, stand on the sidelines. And so, yeah, from the moment I came across Gary's content, I knew that it resonated with me. I knew that I had to get into media and turn myself into a media business, so to speak. And so, yes, years later, I've now been doing this specific kind of stuff maybe 5 years, and to have gone from like a little vlog that I started to now a cable TV show. It's pretty cool. So full circle moment for sure.
It is. So let's get deep here, because you have challenged me on what you just said.
Yeah.
In terms of, I mean, listen, my whole life I've always known I've been destined for big things, my whole life. Mm-hmm. And then, life happens, and And it's so interesting because at this point, I just don't even like talking about how I went through domestic violence. But how do you, like, you can't erase parts of your life.
Sure.
It's just a part of it. It's a
Sure.
part of the story,
Yep.
right? Being a woman, being a Mexican-American woman in a male-dominated industry,
Yep.
and being the help, quite honestly,
Right.
in high net worth homes where I'm the private chef, but yet still seeing, like, so there's a lot of chips on my shoulder.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And so I want to talk about this, but maybe also in a capacity where you can help me through your story. Did you have, as an African American man, how have you navigated that? I never talk about it because to me, my whole life, I've tried to strip that away. Like, I'm just a woman and I want to be accomplished and
Yep.
be based on merit.
Yep.
But the truth is, we live in the United States of America. We're and although we've come far, it's still our truth.
Sure,
right?
sure.
And it's so interesting how the landscape now, it's rising so that it's a benefit to speak to that.
Yep.
The
Yep.
whole journey.
Exactly.
And so how do you feel about that in your own journey, and how do you navigate it now?
Yeah, I think that's a really astute observation that now it's in many ways becoming an advantage because corporate environment is feeling pressured to now be diverse and inclusive. And so I think, if ever there's an opportunity in the history of our country to flip misfortune into a fortune, like now would be the time. But also, I was fortunate because growing up, my parents never really made it a white or black thing or, immigrant or not thing. It was, my mom just like told me, she looked at me when I was in kindergarten, she's like, you can be president, and it was that kind of installation that I absorbed. And it served me well, but I'll say this, growing up below the poverty line placed a massive chip on my shoulder. Like, it's very much the reason why I am as driven as I am right now. And my life's work is to build generational wealth and for myself and in our communities. And that's because, like, growing up the way we did, what have you, in New York in the 90s, like, there's just not that mindset. Right. And
was it ever debilitating? Was it ever?
No.
It always was a positive driving force.
Well, it wasn't. At some point, it did, but in the earliest foundational years where I grew up, everyone was broke, so you never really, it didn't jump out at you. It wasn't actually until I moved to Florida, and because my mom was a custodian in an upper middle class kind of neighborhood, one of the perks that your kids can go to that school district. So I went, and that was the first time that I felt that stark juxtaposition where there were kids who had very large homes, and when they turned 16 they got brand new cars, and I didn't even have my own room, that kind of thing. But yeah, and I remember a time too where I can recall being bitter at my parents because I was into guitar, and like I would never have the nice guitar, and little things like stupid kid shit. But now fast forward, and it's a beautiful thing because all those experiences just made me. I have so much fortitude now and resilience, and a lot of my peers that I grew up with never had to endure those punches, so
right.
They couldn't go the distance.
Right.
And everyone has different ambitions, but my ambitions are large, and so my early years really set me up for big wins later.
Mm-hmm. I just find it fascinating, and I love the fact that. Okay, so why are you specifically focused on investing in women and people of color?
Yeah, I appreciate you asked that question. A lot of people think it's like a Mother Teresa, like, oh, you're doing so good for the world. And like, yeah, there's a big part of that, but it's also a very good business case. Think about it. 98% of all capital goes to our white male counterparts. And while that's great, that means that 2%, only 2%, last year, 2018, there was $84 billion invested into venture capital as a whole, right? So just 2% of that, it's making its way to women and minorities. But think about women and minorities from the perspective of how much of the population we make up.
Right.
Right? Like upwards of 70%. Yeah. And so we are a very large segment of the population, women, and other groups. And look, It's really hard. We have subconscious bias. The stats show it clearly. For instance, something like 86% of investors are white, and roughly 85% of people who receive capital are white. In gender, it's even more stark. It's 89% of investors are male, and thus 89% of founders that receive capital are male. And that's okay. It's subconscious bias, but at Harlem Capital, we just know that the reason there are a lack of diverse funded founders is because there's a lack of diverse gatekeepers of capital.
Correct.
And so if there were more women investors, you know how many women founders that we see that are creating, our most recent investment, we invested into a tampon company, a brilliant gal out of Columbus, Ohio.
Lola?
No, Aunt Flo.
Okay.
They create, organic menstrual products, and they sell it into corporates like WeWork and so forth. But anyway, the whole point is, when she was selling it to me, I was like, well, she wants these WeWork to stock tampons. And I said, well, but women carry menstrual products everywhere, don't they? And I called women close to me and I said, hey, you carry tampons, don't you? And she said, yeah. And then, but this founder, and the whole reason I bring this up is because the founder of Aunt Flo, Claire, she said, John, women carry menstrual products because they're not stocked anywhere. Right? And if the regulatory environment right now is pushing corporates to stock menstrual products in certain places, because you shouldn't have to, have one handy, right, to meet a basic bodily function need. And that was a moment where I realized, like, wow, I wouldn't have been able to arrive at that conclusion alone because I don't have that perspective. If someone's creating something for communities of color, a white male investor who comes from an upper middle class background is just inherently not going to have that connection, right? And so to answer your question, yes, it's a good thing that we're doing for the world, but it's also a very good business case because we're funding founders who are creating things for totally different communities that we come from.
Right. Well, and I want to speak to something so important that you said in your speech. And so I'm summarizing it with my own words in that relentlessness has no color. Ingenuity of thinking, of innovation, of creating niche, sectors for yourself, there's no color to that, right? And so it's a great disservice for people to just be looked over when they have that chemistry, when they have those pieces. So I know a lot of people. So what do you look for when you're looking at a perspective? Like, is it the jockey? Is it the horse? Is it?
Yeah. Well, to touch on this thing that you were saying earlier, when I was younger...
Yeah, expand on that, because I thought that was really brilliant.
When I was younger, I remember I did a panel one time in Harlem, and I said that race is not really a big deal. Just go out and do your fucking shit. And I remember that really polarized the audience, and I had half of the crowd was like, yo, I've been actually feeling that, because we're in a very racially charged environment, and it's a disservice if it feeds victimization, in my humble opinion.
Right.
But then the other half, folks who've been around were like, son, it's easy for you to say that now, but we've had battles to fight. And now I understand there's a delicate balance. One, for sure, there's so many systemic things that create disproportionate results in certain communities, most often of color and so forth. But then my approach to it, because I'm a businessman, I'm a diehard capitalist, so I really see entrepreneurship as like the remedy for that.
Right.
Like, I really see creating economic empowerment and mobility for folks as that's the most effective way. Or at least that's the way that most speaks to me. There are people out there who are activists and they might be prolific writers and that's how they combat it and so forth. But my time here up till now and for the foreseeable future really is just going to be, building wealth and helping people build wealth. And so that's my answer to that.
So how do you navigate on a micro, though, on a day-to-day, that delicate balance of being in the trenches and being mindful of what you just said to honor racism, to, you know what I mean? Like, to honor it, but not to put it on such a pedestal that it debilitates.
Correct.
I mean, which is why I started this. Like at this point, I'm trying to navigate for myself. Do I talk about domestic violence? I should, because hopefully someone who's really struggling right now with that can see me and like, well, someone is in a better place, you know? And although it's a horrific subject that many people just want to close the door on, maybe if I speak to it and shed light to it, we can turn it.
Sure.
And with so much, depression and other things that linger, I think, and you know this, that entrepreneurs, real entrepreneurs, there's mindset is a huge component.
Sure.
So when you have these emotional trappings wearing on you, it stops you from executing.
Yep.
Right?
No, I would agree. And
so how do you coach yourself and also your the businesses that you mentor?
It's a great question. Early on, and I always know I never wanted to be the race guy. I never because then you bring that to the forefront. And like I just love building businesses, and like I'll let those ingredients that formed me, prevail in how I run my businesses. But I never wanted to make that the thing. And I think like for you, as you think about it, I think your approach is, if it resonates with you, then it works. Like some people want to bring these issues to the forefront because that's what they feel passionate about. But if you want to be a chef or a media personality or what have you, and that's part of your story, then it ends up becoming less so about it. And it's more so like, okay, cool, she overcame that and look what she's done versus making it a subject. I don't know. That's where I'm at with it right this moment. But
it evolves, right?
It evolves. And I think when I get older, I'll be able to, I'll have the wherewithal and the infrastructure and the bandwidth to more directly tackle issues. But right now, I just want to show that these issues aren't, they're not deterministic.
Right.
They don't 100% define you. You can get past
and
anything.
Truly, I mean, I'm seeing it for myself that when you just keep your head down and you keep executing, that merit is the thing that becomes your calling card.
That's right. And that's why people should watch my TV show coming out on February 10th.
Please, plug it because we're going to be wrapping up soon.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Yeah, it's a great project. I'm hosting a show for Viceland. It's called The Hustle. It's executive produced by Alicia Keys and Marcus Samuelson, whom obviously is in your world.
Yes.
And they're trailing me as I help founders grow to the next level. And what I love about this show is, unlike Shark Tank, which by the way, I love that show, and we have Matt Higgins here who's a guest shark, but that captures a very fulfilling moment of like you pitch and you either get a yes or no.
Yeah.
And that's why the format of that show works, because viewers love that instant payoff. But we thought we'd do something a little riskier, a little different, and show the world the glamorous and unglamorous parts of building a business. So every episode is an hour long, and we trail a founder through the ins and outs. And it's a business turnaround show, starring yours truly, I guess. And we'll see how it goes. Hopefully, my hopes is that the market receives it really well, and there's a lot of prosperity and longevity. But sometimes you put your all into something, and for whatever reason, the market wasn't ready, or there was one ingredient that wasn't right. But I'm hoping this makes the perfect stew.
I have a feeling that it will be dead on.
Thank you.
Because that's what we need right now, right? I think that there's been so much celebrity and fanfare around entrepreneurship that I'm dying to see the in the trenches moments.
Awesome.
And how does that person get through that day, right? So I'm really looking forward to it.
Thank you very much.
So where can folks find you? Where would you like them to?
I want to direct all folks to find me on Instagram and LinkedIn. If
Okay.
you just type in John Henry, you should find me. Hit me up. I respond to everyone as soon as I can. Looking forward to connecting with folks. Thank you for listening to Breaking Bread. Great concept, by the way. Great show.
Thank you so much.
Great name. Great everything.
Thank you.
So I'm looking forward to, I'm sure we'll see each other before Next Agent 2021.
Yeah.
But I can't wait to listen to this episode and others.
I look forward to it. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Lizette.
Bye.